Good afternoon and welcome to the distinguished lecture series on energy efficiency. Newer greetings to all the participants and welcome you all for this distinguished lecture. To just give you a quick brief, we started this lecture series in May 2020 and we had the privilege of several experts addressing us on this occasion. This happens on the first Monday of every month between 4 and 5. We had Mr. Ravichandran Purushottaman, Mr. Unnikrishnan, Mr. Ranganath, Mr. V. Suresh, Dr. Ajay Mathur, who was then the Director General of TERI, Mr. Tejpreet Singh Chopra, were some of the earlier speakers at this occasion. We also had Mr. Brian Madave, Head of Energy Efficiency of International Energy Agency, Dr. Naushad Forbes, the past President of CII, Dr. Jairam Bardharaj, Managing Director of LG Equipment, Mr. Padmanabhan, who was formerly the Energy Advisor of USAID, Dr. Rene Van Berkel, Head of the Regional Office of UNIDO, and Mr. S. Raghupati, Deputy Director General of CII, were some of the speakers in the last year. And we also had the privilege of Dr. Ashok Sarkar of World Bank, Mr. Saurabh Kumar of ESL, Mr. Abhay Bakre, the Director General of Bureau of Energy Efficiency, Dr. Anshu Bharadwaj, the CEO of Shakti Foundation, Mr. Chirag Baijal, MD of Carrier India. And lastly, in October 2021, we had the privilege of Mr. Upendra Bhatt, co-founder and managing director of C Kinetics, delivering the distinguished lecture. Today, friends, we are privileged to have to the 19th lecture starting this year in 2022. We are privileged to have Mr. A.R. Unnikrishnan, managing director of Saint Gobain India Glass Business, addressing us and delivering the distinguished lecture. Mr. Unnikrishnan is the managing director of Saint Gobain India Private Limited Glass Business. More than 20 years of rich experience in the glass industry, and he played a pivotal role in establishing and taking Saint Gobain Glass India's leadership in the Indian market. It's one of the state-of-the-art manufacturing companies with impeccable quality and brand in India. Mr. Unnikrishnan was also instrumental in establishing the Safe Glass Consortium and also establishing the Glass Academy, a very unique initiative towards world-class manufacturing and skill building practices amongst the various building fraternity. To just give you an idea of Mr. Unnikrishnan in terms of his achievements and contributions, Mr. Unnikrishnan has been very closely involved with the Saint Gobain Group right from the beginning. He initially joined the Grindwell Group, which was acquired by Saint Gobain subsequently. He has worked with the Saint Gobain leadership team since 1997 to develop the strategic blueprint for Saint Gobain's investment in India in the glass business. He has been leading and guiding many initiatives apart from his leadership at Saint Gobain. He's a thought leader in the area of sustainability and has been one of the important persons who have been involved in regulations and drafting policy initiatives. We have had the privilege of Mr. Unnikrishnan contributing to many of the rating programs of the Indian Green Building Council. He has been very closely associated with the IGBC right from the very beginning, and his leadership and technical inputs have been very, very useful in developing of several of the rating programs of IGBC. The chairman of Glazing Society of India, chairman of CII Tamil Nadu CEO Forum. He's also chairing right now the CII Southern Region Task Force on Future of Manufacturing. And last but not the least, he's also a member of the executive board of Indian Green Building Council, IGBC. Thank you, Mr. Unnikrishnan. Thank you for your time. It's a privilege to have you deliver this distinguished lecture. Over to you, sir. Thank you.
Thank you. Good afternoon, and thank you, Mr. Venkatagiri, for a very generous introduction. I also wish you, your family, and everyone who is participating today a very, very happy New Year. Give me a second to share the slides. I hope you can see the presentation. Thank you. Yeah. So it's a real pleasure and honor to be invited to deliver the lecture today as part of the IGBC platform. When you talk about green sustainability, energy efficiency, and especially from a building and industry point of view, the first name that comes to your mind is IGBC. And because of for the pioneering work the Indian Green Building Council has done over the past couple of decades in the country. So it's a real privilege and honor to be here today delivering this lecture. So thank you for inviting me. When you talk about energy efficiency, the first thing that comes to our mind is really on the ill effects of not having energy efficiency, or what we immediately associate with the climate change and its the negative effects that we suffer. Being located in Chennai, I think I am reminded more often than probably other places on the ill effects of climate change. Even as late as last Thursday, we received an unseasonal, exceptionally high amount of rain, which brought the whole city to a standstill. So I think all of us are experiencing in different forms the ill effects of the climate change. The amount of the greenhouse gases, the CO2 that is going to be emitted as the whole world is economically advancing, and as a country we are advancing towards our 5 trillion objective by 2030. It's going to be profound. So I think it's all the more important that we are talking about the energy efficiency today. As if the current situation is not sufficient, I think the whole world is on an economic growth trajectory, especially post-COVID. Most of the economies are seeing a significant growth. India is not left behind. Therefore, the load on the emissions, the load on the climate change is going to be even more significant in the years to come. It's not just that. I think it's the energy mix, the source of energy that different countries have, also therefore results in significant amount of extraction of resources, be it natural resources purely from the oil and gas, or from the different building materials, construction materials, whatever we need for our economic growth or our aspirations for a better living, is really making us deprive the world of more natural resources, in turn, therefore, resulting in more CO2 emissions. Now, all what I said so far is on the moral side, which I think many of us understand, and we are responsible enough to ensure that the way we design, construct, do our businesses, we are very much aware of that and we take care of that. I think there is another important angle which needs to be seen as businesses, and more so as a country. India needs to understand is that today 60% of our energy production is from fossil fuels. Only the 40% comes from either hydro or other renewable sources of power. 60% comes largely from coal and gas and other fossil fuels, which means it's not the best way of producing energy. It's not the sustainable way of growing the economy. As a country, we spend around 6 lakh crores every year on importing oil and gas for various needs, for various energy needs, be it in the public sector or in the private sector, including the mobility, all that put together. And as a country, we are not, we don't produce too much of oil and gas from our own soil, and we are heavily dependent on imports. 85% of our oil and gas needs are met from imports from different countries. So we have a larger existential question as an economy, as a country, which is on a tremendous growth path, where we want to become 5 trillion in a few years' time. This actually raises significant questions on our energy security, our forex reserves. Is it sufficient enough to really support this kind of a growth? So I think apart from the sustainability and the moral issues that we need to really consider while looking at the energy efficiency. I think as Indians, we have even more reasons to really look at why energy efficiency is so important. Now, the energy is used for various purposes. Today in my talk, I am largely going to focus on two sectors. One of the buildings, which all of us live, work in buildings largely. And second is from the industries, because I'm sure many of the participants today are also from the industry, and therefore we manufacture, we provide product solutions, we extend services in many industries. So buildings and industries, these two account for roughly around 70% of the energy which is consumed. I'm not talking about the greenhouse gas emissions. On that, probably the contribution would be less because the agriculture also contributes a significant part of it. Maybe transport contributes even more. But purely from an energy efficiency point of view, roughly around 65 to 70% of the energy consumed is either in the buildings or in the industries. So if we can do something really on improving energy efficiency, I think we are really contributing to a more sustainable development for our country. The other important aspect to be considered is that unlike many of the developed countries, whether it is US or some parts of Europe, for us, 2/3 of our buildings are yet to be constructed. That means we have two issues on one side. Therefore, we need to, the risk for us is even larger. But on the positive side, we can learn from the mistakes of many of the other developed countries and do things very differently. Start our construction, start our designs, everything very differently, so that the future construction is more energy efficient, more sustainable. And it's very evident that in the buildings, whether it's commercial buildings or in the residential buildings, the cooling and the appliances are going to be the two prominent consumers of energy going forward, and this is expected to become even more. The aspirations of people are higher, for the need for comfort is even more, and therefore both are leading to more appliances being used, more air conditioning being used. So I think it's bound to have more energy consumption in the country. Therefore, there is a need for us to focus on what we can do in the case of buildings and what we can do in the industries, those who produce products and offer it to the building materials or any other industry for that matter. What can we do on the energy efficiency? So I propose, that we should really look at it from these 5 different dimensions: policy, product, process, philosophy, and the people point. I'll quickly take you through each one of those. As far as the policy is concerned, I think that's where IGBC has been a pioneer in really, setting a policy framework in the country. Even before, as a country, we started talking about energy efficiency. We started talking about what can be done in the buildings. I think IGBC had set the framework for green buildings in the country and really started a movement over 2 decades back. There are other organizations also working in that. I think so. Green Building Forum itself is a great source of inspiration and technical content for us to really set the policy framework in the country. We have Energy Conservation Building Code in the country, which came in 2007, further upgraded in 2017. But unfortunately, it is still not made mandatory in the country. And a recent study that we did as part of our business when we were analyzing, we found that only 45% of the buildings comply with the ECBC from a building envelope point of view. Now, that is there's a lot of headroom for us to really improve on the energy efficiency point of view. It's also important, therefore, that we have many standards which are developed. Today, in the National Building Code, we have a chapter included on energy efficient design, on sustainability. I think we must compliment our current chairman of IGBC, Mr. Suresh, who was really championing that cause and leading that particular panel and ensuring that that is included in the national, building code. Therefore, there is, I think, a lot of good work has happened. But I think from a policy point of view, there is a need for making certain things mandatory, because that's how, as a country, as citizens, we are used to. What gets mandatory, we tend to follow a lot more than what is voluntary. So I think there is a need for the policy framework to move in that direction. However, we also need to make that compliance much more easier, less costly. So the monitoring and verification mechanism, the people required for that, awareness on people who are required to design, implement all that. I think all that requires a lot to be increased from that point of view. As a country, we are advancing heavily on digital. I think we have a great opportunity to use digital platforms to really provide knowledge, modeling, and so many other things to really advance from a policy framework without too much of pain for the end consumers. I want to share with you a couple of examples of what some of the other countries have done. For example, in France, as part of when the COVID struck, the biggest issue was on how are you going to really recover the economy. One of the smartest things that European Union has done, and especially France has done, was really to provide many incentives to boost energy efficiency for sustainable development. Around 80% of the construction in a country like France happens from renovation of buildings, not new construction. Huge amount of incentivization has been done. If I remember right, it's around 560 billion euros have been set aside for improving energy efficiency in the building sector. Now, this is a huge impetus when you are looking at boosting the economy and at the same time also energy efficiency. And it's a holistic picture which is looked at. So look at the life cycle, the energy consumption of a building and incentivize based on that, not based on only the parts, but as a whole. It's a very good example of how, from a policy dimension, you can really boost energy efficiency. Even way before COVID, I think United Kingdom, UK had followed a window labeling system, a window rating system, which is very easy to understand, which applies across the country in different parts of the country. Very easy to understand, very easy to implement, and very easy for the consumers to source products. And it was really incentivizing from a market dynamics point of view, energy efficiency. I think these are very good models that that we can borrow from elsewhere in the world. As a country, we are also investing a lot of money on boosting the economy. One, to revive post-COVID. There are many PLI schemes, production-linked incentive schemes, which are running. So I think many of us, if we can come together and make a real case with the government, I'm sure we can get a reasonable amount of money kept aside for boosting energy efficiency in buildings, in the industries. That's on the policy framework. Let's now leave the government. Let's look at what we can do ourselves. I think as manufacturers, as providers of products, solutions, and services in the market, I think it's our it's our responsibility to ensure that one, we adapt the products and solutions to our country. India is very different from some of the other countries. What applies in the US may not apply in India. Therefore, it is necessary for us to adapt. We need to invest in terms of, we have a very strong case for Atmanirbhar Bharat, Make in India. It's equally important for us to research in India, to set up research facilities. So I'm sharing a few things, as an organization that we had done over the past couple of decades. We have one of our 8 global transversal research centers in India, in IIT Madras Research Park, where over 100 PhDs, they work on providing solutions for hot and humid climates, so which is very much adapted to our situations. Second is, you need to create the capacity to produce products. I mean, I remember when IGBC started the movement on green buildings, one of the key topics was where are the products? Do we have the material, building materials available in the country to really make the green buildings? And are those materials going to be more expensive? Therefore, is green building going to be more expensive? I think it is very important that each of us from the industry, we invest ahead of time, create the capacity, create the capability in the country to produce and make available products which will boost energy efficiency. To be that 15 years back, when the green buildings were in very nascent stage, at that time itself, to really produce energy efficient glasses which will make the facades more energy efficient. So you don't consume a lot of energy for cooling, but you let in adequate amount of light for daylighting, but at the same time you cut on the energy ingress into the building. Today, 90% of the products that we manufacture and sell in India are EPD certified. So it's a commitment. It's a commitment that if you are a serious player in the country, that we need to make. So I think it's important for us to not restrict our efforts to just mere communication on green, but real things on the ground in terms of life cycle assessment, creating the capability, creating the research capability, creating the expertise within your organization so that you can really help the ecosystem to make energy efficient buildings. So product life cycle is something that we have been really focusing today. We believe, I think when you talk about energy efficiency, one of the key point to note is also the negawatt. That is the energy that you did not consume because you had the designs which were better, the materials used were better in the buildings. Our estimate is that thanks to energy efficient products which were made available to the Indian market, we would have contributed to at least 15 gigawatts of capacity addition to energy. Now, if that is what we could as an organization do, as a single organization, just imagine the power that all of us have together, the various sectors, various industries together, the power that we have in terms of really boosting energy efficiency and really enabling sustainable development. Another huge important factor is also the raw materials and the what we call broken glass cullet. So in our industry, glass is infinitely recyclable. So which means you can keep recycling as many times as you want. It doesn't deteriorate in terms of the quality. So the effort is really how do you bring in more and more broken glass from the process anyway we get, but also from the market, from our customers, from our channel, from the building sites. I think there are specific efforts being made to really bring in the circular economy in our system. It's not very mature. At least in the case of glass, it's not very mature. I know that in the case of electronics, I think there's been some element of effort in terms of building that circular economy, but on many of the building materials, we still don't have. I think if we can do that, that significantly improves the energy efficiency because the energy that you require to melt broken glass is significantly lower than the energy that you require to melt virgin raw materials. So it's a significant advantage, even if you have to probably invest a little higher in the initial phase. So that's on the product. Coming to the process, I think many of us are in the building materials industry. Many of us are also manufacturing, not necessarily building materials, but in the manufacturing sector. And we consume a lot of energy in our manufacturing process. One of the things that we can do, and I think our experience is that thanks to good design of our manufacturing processes, machineries that we use, intelligent application of Industry 4.0 techniques, we can easily save around 15 to 20% of the energy that we consume. Now, that's hell of a lot. That's a hell of a lot of energy that you can save. For example, the furnaces that we have for manufacturing of glass, these are large furnaces, producing 1,000 tons a day of glass, consume a lot of energy. I think we have been systematically working on improving the energy efficiency. Now, thanks to the kind of furnace design, use of data from the previous furnaces, and the right choice of refractories, we have managed to bring down the energy efficiency or improve the energy efficiency and bring down the energy consumption by 25% compared to what furnace which was built 10 years back and now. No, that's a significant improvement that you can do. So these are efforts that we need to do. Industry 4.0, I think it's a most talked about subject, probably less understood also as a subject. We found that simple methods from the industry 4.0, for example, having smart energy meters in different parts of your production line, which tells you on a real time in terms of what is the energy consumption at each station, each motor, and each point, can significantly help you to understand, are you consuming more, are you consuming less? You can make the direct comparison with like to like equipment and make significant progress on that. We have done that. Today, 100% of our manufacturing facilities are equipped with this kind of smart energy meters, which really helps, combined with VFD and many other things, which I'm sure some of the speakers prior to me would have alluded to. You can significantly reduce on the energy consumption. You have very cost-effective, simple condition monitoring mechanisms available from the Industry 4.0 platform, which tells you in advance, measuring the vibrations, measuring the temperature on any kind of a breakdown, which is likely for an equipment. Remember, any kind of breakdown in industry, in the manufacturing, is going to consume then energy without producing anything. So I think it's important. So use simple methods, having visual tools to really measure, monitor, and display on the OEE, on the overall efficiency of the equipment. The simple tool by which you nudge people to improve on the OEE. The higher the OEE, the less the energy that you consume. And have very good methods. How do you really empower our team and have a very good method in terms of aligning the people to really work on this energy efficiency improvement projects. So these are a few steps that we practiced in our manufacturing sites, and we have found very good results for that. And 15 to 20% reduction on energy consumption is something significant. So these are very easily available. And let me also tell you, the Industry 4.0 investments aren't very high. In fact, you get the payback in less than a year in most cases. In very few cases, probably maybe a year and a few months, but significantly lower compared to many of the other investments that we typically make. Now coming to the people, I think this is where finally, you can have the technology, you can have policies, you can have frameworks, everything, but finally it's people, all of us, who make things happen. One, it is necessary for us to really build necessary skills in our industry, in our ecosystem. One of the initiatives that we did, and I'm happy that Mr. Venkat mentioned about Glass Academy in his introduction, and IGBC was one of the very early adopters. I remember around 10 years back, Glass Academy had signed the MOU with IGBC in providing e-learning modules on energy efficient design of buildings, energy efficient design of facades, and so many things from that point of view. I think these are steps that each of us can take in our respective industry. How do we really help our ecosystem? Because it's not just one person or one organization or one sector that is going to change the whole thing. I think all of us have to contribute in each of our sectors. In what way we can provide a platform to really impart more knowledge, create more skills to improve on energy efficiency is something which is extremely important. And I would really urge, and especially all the manufacturers and all the service providers in the building and the industry sector, to really pay attention on that. The last of the P's is really on the philosophy. And to me, I think this is the most important one when you are looking at from an organization's point of view. Now, it's important that you have, as an organization, have a larger purpose beyond making profits, beyond making money. You have a larger purpose as an organization that binds the whole organization, regardless of where you are, what level you are, whether you are working in the shop floor or whether you are, the director of a company, it doesn't matter. How do you bind everyone together for a larger purpose? And a purpose which is more closely connected to sustainability, energy efficiency, and green development. So just to share with you, I think I'm privileged to be working in Saint-Gobain, where we have a very clearly stated purpose that we want to make the world a better home for everyone in the future. Now that has several meanings, and one of those meanings is really on really providing a sustainable future, green development, energy efficiency. Now, when you set that kind of a large purpose statement and you align, what it has really done is it has brought people in 70 countries, around 180,000 people together under one umbrella with one simple purpose or reason for us to exist. That's not enough. The purpose alone is not enough. Therefore, you also need to clearly set a vision and articulate it in simple terms for the whole organization. So be the worldwide leader in light and sustainable construction is the vision for all of us. 180,000 people working in this organization in 70 countries, one single vision, which is be the worldwide leader in light and sustainable construction. Now that's a significant and a very, very strong message to everyone in the organization to align with a very noble cause. Of course, it also gives economic results, but it aligns you with a noble cause for you to really further work on. Again, purpose and vision are not enough. You also need to set measurable, quantifiable objectives also as an organization. So as an organization globally, we have set 2050 as the year by which we want to reach carbon neutrality. Now, this is, one can say, okay, 2050 is another 28 years from now. Many of us may not be working, many of us may not be even living also, so how does it matter? But I think you have to break it down. It's a journey. 2050 objective is a journey, it's a destination that we want to reach, for which we have to go through a journey. So we have now objectives set for every 5 years, every 10 years in terms of what we have to achieve, in terms of energy efficiency, in terms of resource consumption, in terms of water consumption. This is very important. So as an organization, I think having this philosophy, a strong philosophy, which is really supporting sustainability, energy efficiency is very important. And that too articulated in a very, very structured fashion with a clear purpose, clear vision, and clear goals, which are measured. And not just that, it's also incentivized and disincentivized. So there are internal carbon pricing, which are very strictly implemented when you're talking about any capital investment, when you're talking about the operations. These are very strong internal incentives and disincentives, which will really help that everyone aligns with this kind of an objective. So this is something which, to me, I think very important, because many of us work in different kinds of organizations, whether the large organization, small organization. It's important for us to have a philosophy, a purpose, which is very well aligned with sustainable development. So these are the 5 P's which I thought I will share. I mean, it's nice to lament about lack of energy efficiency or so much of CO2 emissions, but it's equally important, or even more important, for us to look at what are the solutions. That is when we become part of the solution than part of the problem. So to me, I think these 5 P's are very important for us to, and easily implementable in each of our domains. Last, before I end, I think the crucial part is how do we get? I mean, again, as I said earlier, it's not for one organization, one individual, one sector alone to make this happen. It requires many of us to come together. Those who are designing a building, designing a factory, or building the machinery for an industry, to consultants who are involved in that, the companies who are involved in the construction, various material suppliers, to policy makers, people who are consulting on energy efficiency. I think all the stakeholders need to come together to really make this happen. I once again would really compliment IGBC on that. I think through its various efforts on green buildings and also Green Co and green products rating, various rating mechanisms. It has created a platform for many of us from different walks of life, different sectors to come together. And I am sure, under the chairmanship of Mr. Suresh and the leadership of Mr. Venkatagiri, you will have many more initiatives to really bring the different stakeholders together to ensure that as India walk towards that 5 trillion economy and we become an economic power, we also set an example to the world that we can do that in a more energy efficient, in a more sustainable, and in a more green way. So thank you for your attention. I'll be happy to take any questions if you have.
Thank you, Mr. Unnikrishnan. Thank you so much. I think your 5 Ps were very clearly articulated with both what is being done, what is to be done more, and what further are your thoughts on each one of these 5 Ps that you clearly laid out. There are a few questions, Mr. Unnikrishnan. I'll maybe try to group them together and pose it to you so that we could take your suggestions and input from them. The first was around the carbon targets which the country has taken. India has taken a net zero carbon target by 2070, which, I mean, as you rightly said, 2070 looks to be a little farther. And for this sector, for the construction sector, for the building sector, what, in your opinion, could be the immediate targets, maybe 2030, 2040, 2050? Because what we do now could make a clear way for the sector to move towards net zero and thereby enabling the country to move towards it. So do you have any suggestions on what this sector should look at as an immediate target to moving towards net zero?
Yeah, I think it's a very good question. I think the construction and buildings would contribute significantly to that target. One is, I think we don't have a very strong norm that we have set for energy performance index for buildings. I think that is something, if we can implement that across the country and start comparing the cities. We have today smart cities, and smart cities are compared. There is a ranking on that. There is Swachh Bharat, where Swachh Bharat, the cities are compared, and Indore is very proud to be ranked 1 year after year. But we don't have any ranking for energy performance index across different cities. Even if we can start with just the top 10 cities in the country, and I would even request IGBC, because you have all the knowledge, you have all the the expertise on that field. Even voluntarily, we start putting something like that. I think it automatically sets in motion kind of a competition among different people. I think it is important for us to first set that energy performance index. Second is the source of energy. I think the source of energy can also bring down the emission point of view. Mm-hmm. Today, as a country, we are moving on the right path on the renewable energy. The government has set an objective for 450 gigawatts of renewable energy, of which 300 gigawatt is going to be on solar by 2030, and a lot is happening in that field. And today there are very good mechanisms available where you can do power purchase from renewable sources, and these regulatory frameworks are already available. So I think if these two directions we can take as a first step itself, I think that will set in motion clear objectives, and progressively we can march towards that 2070 objective.
Sure, thank you. There was one question on your presentation, Mr. Unnikrishnan, on the life cycle thinking. That was, I mean, you mentioned about how Saint-Gobain has been looking at life cycle thinking, and one of the questions is, how can we make it mainstream? How can we get more industry players talk about life cycle thinking? How can we get life cycle thinking based decision making happening at the user segment? Is there something to be done at the industry level, something to be done at the policy level? How do we take life cycle thinking more mainstream?
Yeah, I would say more than the policy, I think it's for the businesses to really, pitch based on the life cycle benefits that you give. Just to give you an example, I think we have done recently a building in Bangalore for Bagmini Tech Park for Google. It's an electrochromic glass, which is very expensive. But when you look at the life cycle cost of that, and you talk about the energy efficiency that it can bring, the various things, when you do the working, then you get convinced on that. So it's important for the businesses to see finally what works the best is the market forces. So if the businesses start, pitching based on the life cycle point of view, and more people start talking about, the leaders start talking about it in each of the sectors, then the rest of the industry will start following that. I think that to me is the best one. But on the life cycle cost, I mean, one is the useful life of the building and what you save. Equally important is also to work on the circular economy part of it. And I think we have a long way to go on that in India, because many things are in the informal sectors. It's highly decentralized. Many of those areas also don't follow very ethical practices on many things. So it's very important for us to probably, the industries to come together. I mean, in electronics, that's how it has happened. A few of the leaders came together and said, fine, I mean, let's set up some kind of a, sensible recycling mechanism in place. So I think that's how it'll start emerging.
Thanks. There was one question on recycling, Mr. Krishnan. I mean, several sectors are talking about recycling and they are putting their efforts in terms of increasing the recycling. Steel has been one which has been doing, and many other metal industries have been doing it. Electronics, you just mentioned, has been doing their bit on recycling. I mean, you rightly touched upon pellets as something which can be recycled infinite number of times and still does not lose its property.
Right.
What, in your opinion, can be done to enhance the recycling of pellets? I mean, any thoughts on how do we make this recycling or collection and return process much more organized? Any thoughts on increasing the recycling part?
Yeah, so one, before going to the government, I would always say we should first look at what we can do. I think I would really urge the large construction companies. There are many, I don't want to take names, but there are today in India, we have really large construction companies who are, also on the path of green. In their construction sites, if they can have a segregation as a mandatory method for, collecting all the construction waste, that in itself can really significantly help. Today, a lot of glass is generated as a waste in the construction site. Gypsum is, a lot of plasterboard and gypsum is generated as a waste, but it's all getting mixed up and it's going to landfill. But imagine you have a good segregation method at the source, which is at the construction site. I mean, today, many of the cities, many of the colonies have very good segregation. They have implemented that. So I'm sure large construction companies, it will be eminently possible for them to do that. And if they do that, I think that is a very good method of, first segregate so that we can collect it. At this point in time, it won't be economically viable. But I'm saying, companies like us, we are saying it doesn't matter. Even if it's going to cost us more, not economically viable, we are still willing to do that, because we have to, somebody has to start. And, you have to develop that ecosystem. And once it is developed, then you can look at how to improve the efficiency, how to improve, the whole cost-effective, part of that.
Thank you. You also mentioned that glass is green and can be recycled several times over and over again. Having such good properties, Mr. Krishnan, is there a possibility for glass to replace other building materials? Maybe, for example, plastic, any other material that goes into the building sector itself? Are you looking at glass as a replacement for other building materials as well?
I thought it was already happening. So if you look at the buildings which were, 25 years back and the buildings of today, I think there is a lot of difference in the way. I think today glass facade is a standard for most of the buildings. And in a way, it has replaced, a more energy guzzling concrete, and and also reduced the natural resources that you consume, because essentially what a 6 millimeter glass or a 24 millimeter double glazed unit of a glass is replacing a 150 or 250 millimeter thick brick or concrete wall, which therefore brings down the weight of the building, further brings down the consumption of concrete, cement, all that part. So overall, I think it has several possibilities. It's also getting used in a lot of interior applications. So today, for the furniture, for the partitions, on many, even in the houses, for the internal partitions, it's getting used because it's very thin, it's very light, and it's a very thin material, and therefore it doesn't take away too much space. So it has got an economic, benefit as well in terms of saving the carpet, space within the building.
Thank you. One question specifically was on the window rating, which you mentioned as a case study from UK. Do you see a need for that kind of a rating program in India? Is there a need? And if there is a need and relevance, how do you suggest we should take it forward?
I think there is a strong need. There is a strong need because many of our cities are developing, and many of the cities are growing in terms of the the urban population. Today, our urbanization is only at some 32%, and we expect it to become maybe 45 or 50 in just a few years' time, which means a large number of people are going to come to the cities. You are going to have high-rise buildings for housing and things like that. And today, most of the houses, most of the apartments do have air conditioning. I think it's a standard for reasonable, size apartments, where it's affordable for people. People do have. How can we reduce the need for cooling? So I think the windows can play a big role in that. Windows and the glass which is used in that can play a big role in that. There are enough examples. There are developers who have really moved in that direction. In fact, some of the developers, for example, like K. Reheja, who's been a pioneer in green and has been always right from the beginning with IGBC, they have done that for many of their residential buildings. So it's important that we have that so that a large number of builders, developers across the country, and eventually the end consumers start asking about, is my window 3-star rated, 5-star rated? I mean, look at the appliances, what Bureau of Energy Efficiency did. I think they did a fantastic job. Today, when somebody walks into an appliance shop, you ask for is it a 5-star certified, refrigerator or an air conditioner? That conversation for it to happen and that question to come from the end consumer, it is necessary that this energy efficiency is communicated in a simple language that people can understand. So I think it makes enormous sense.
Thank you. As you rightly said, there were a lot of participants from the industry, and therefore there are a few questions on the glass manufacturing process, Mr. Unnikrishnan. I've tried to group them together. One question was on the internal carbon pricing that you mentioned Saint-Gobain as a group has adopted. How is it helping you in your decision-making process? I mean, how are you using internal carbon pricing in your decision-making?
Yeah, so, it's not, Saint-Gobain is not the only company which is following the internal carbon pricing. I think it's a very well accepted practice in many of the large international corporations. When it comes to large capex decisions, you have to really justify that whatever emissions that you are going to generate, you have enough mechanisms to mitigate that. Number one. Second, compared to a previous investment that you made, how energy efficient you are making it has to be really done. So the moment the carbon pricing comes in, there is an incentive for people who are working on that investment, working on the project to look at all the avenues of really bringing in that energy efficiency and bringing down the emissions. So I think it's a virtuous cycle which works within an organization to really improve on the energy efficiency part of it.
Thank you. How does glass manufacturing as an industry in India compare on its energy efficiency or technology fronts globally? I mean, we have a wide range of glass manufacturers in the country, some of them as big as yours and many other smaller players in the industry. One, how energy intensive or how big is this sector, and how do we compare globally, and what more do you think can be done in terms of improving the efficiency of the manufacturing process itself?
Sure. See, when you talk about the glass industry, you have the float glass manufacturing, then you have, the downstream glass processing, which happens in smaller, industries which do the tempering and lamination and all that part of it. The technology by far is similar for everyone, be it the float glass manufacturing or the downstream tempering and other processes are similar. How one differs from the other is really in terms of the deep expertise somebody will have in terms of either designing their furnace and its operational expertise. That may vary from so I can't say that India is inferior or superior compared to some other country in that sense, but I can tell you some of the countries have really made, I don't want to take the names because may not be appropriate, but some of the countries have really made significant shift towards that in terms of really oxygen boosting in the furnaces, changing the refractories to a completely different kind of materials and things like that. So I would say India is not bad in terms of the float glass manufacturing per se. I would say India is not bad. On the downstream processing, it's quite decentralized and it's quite fragmented as an industry. So it is important again for us, companies like us, we do work with many of our downstream processing customers on improving their energy efficiency. It's equally an opportunity, I would say, for organizations like IGBC and many other entities who work on the energy efficiency space to also extend that help for the fragmented industry.
Thank you. Now, I mean, there is a lot of talk on the cleaner fuels. Glass definitely is one of the energy intensive process by itself. And there is a whole lot of discussion happening around hydrogen, for example, or biofuels, for example. Is there a relevance for such cleaner fuels to come into glass making? And Saint-Gobain, as a market leader in this space, are you also exploring these options? Is that also something that we can expect in this sector as well?
Yeah, I think it's absolutely. I think as much as we work on the energy efficiency, it's also important for us to work on the more sustainable sources of energy, and there clearly hydrogen is a possibility. We have some distance to go, I would say, but the good thing is, maybe I should have mentioned earlier in my presentation as well. As a country, when we are looking at this kind of a growth, I think we have also set in motion a hydrogen mission. As a country, we have a hydrogen mission, and the 300 gigawatt of solar is also in a way closely linked to that hydrogen mission in terms of how do you see, for making hydrogen, you need very low price of electricity. You need electrolyzer and you need electricity. These are the two things that you need for making hydrogen. So how do you make it at an economic price so that it can become, because hydrogen, its calorific value is 1/3 of gas, the natural gas. So you need 3 times the volume of hydrogen to replace natural gas. So how do you really produce that much quantity at economical prices is what will really tilt. But the good thing is that I must say, globally, many organizations, including Saint-Gobain, are moving in that direction. There are pilot projects being done in different parts of the world on how to convert the furnaces into hydrogen. You need to do a few things in terms of its design, in terms of safety and other things. And the good news is, as a country, I think both in the public and the private sector, there is a lot of interest and initiative on hydrogen. So I am hopeful that maybe in another say 5 to 10 years, we should be able to convert some of our furnaces to hydrogen.
Thank you. I think there is already a plant which has made a zero carbon steel globally. So maybe Saint-Gobain might come up with a zero carbon glass pretty soon. A couple of questions on this.
We have a zero carbon plasterboard plant in Norway.
I see.
Saint-Gobain is the first in the world on that.
I see. A couple of questions on the buildings which are coming up. One is, you mentioned about policy, and you did mention about a couple of recommendations in the policy part of the 5 Ps on making things mandatory, and also looking at something like a PLI scheme which encourages energy efficiency at the design stage itself. Are there any other policy aspects that you think are required in terms of making the newer building stock, which is coming far more efficient? Is policy the right angle to take up? And if so, what, in your opinion, are the measures to be looked at?
No, I think policy would definitely help. I think, like what I said earlier, if we can set some EPI targets and then really ensure that the new buildings which are coming are complying with that, I think that would be a big step forward in terms of really boosting energy efficiency. I think the country has enough resources to, in terms of designing and building such construction. Today, an energy efficient green building is no more expensive than a conventional building. I know that, I'm sure you were bombarded with such questions always in all the green building conferences. Today, it's no more. It's no more. I think the glass that I supply to a green building and the glass which goes to a non-green building, there isn't any difference in terms of the pricing. So to that extent, I think the materials, resources, design capability, construction capability, all that is available in the country. What we need is, some kind of a policy framework which will ensure that this is now happening for all the future construction.
Thank you. The next question was on the existing building stock, Mr. Unnikrishnan. One option could be to look at a complete retrofit and a revamp. The second, maybe more focus is on the operation and maintenance of the existing assets. So do you think sufficient capacity exists, or is there a need for more capacity building in that space, be it operators, facility managers? I mean, is that segment which is looking at the existing building stock, what in your opinion can be done there more in terms of improving the efficiency?
Yeah, I think there is enough possibility. However, I think my personal feeling is it's more of the inconvenience that you go through in making the transition is what is really deterring people from moving into that. So maybe there is some element of innovation required from companies in doing that. One, I would say is that. Second, I think there isn't one entity which combines different aspects. See, when you're talking about an existing building renovation, means you have got different aspects to be touched. It's not, even if you look at only the building facade, it's not just the facade alone. When the moment you touch facade, you are going to touch something else. You are going to, so it becomes almost like either that building owner has to have an organization which can manage that project, look at all the aspects like how you construct a new building, which in most cases wouldn't be existing at all because it's a running building and they don't do that. I know that some people have tried through the ESCO model, whether they will really provide that kind of energy efficiency. But I think the inconvenience of going through that process and the trust factor probably did not. I would say, I think at this point in time, there is still some more maturity required in the industry and, for some aggregators to come, together to really make this happen. Maybe for now, the focus can be on the new construction.
Thank you. We have several young professionals who have joined this sector also on the call, Unnikrishnan. As you rightly said, I think looking at the targets of 2040, 2050 or 2060, I think many of the young professionals who are here would be seeing those targets and would be working towards achieving the targets. Any words from your side on what they should look at? What is the, what in your opinion should be their approach, or I mean, what should they do to help meet these targets?
Well, first and foremost, significantly enhance your knowledge. I think that's the first thing that you can do. I think the best contribution that you can do for a green future, a sustainable future, is really how knowledgeable you are in terms of how to make it happen. And therefore, I think, even without a purpose, learning on newer aspects, learning from many places is important. Second, no need to copy from somewhere else. I mean, it's not necessary for us to cut and paste, a building from Frankfurt into Bangalore. It's not necessary. It may be for the same fintech company, but I think the needs are very different. So how do you understand the local climatic conditions, our people, human aspects, all that part? And so if you can really understand those aspects and bring that into the design, I think that is important. So I think these are, I would say in simple terms, one, enhance your knowledge and skills on one side. Second is really adapt to what is required for our country.
Thank you. I think we're just about time, Mr. Unnikrishnan, and I have just one last question. I mean, buildings is something where everyone is involved. I mean, the professionals are involved, and finally, it's also the common man who's involved. And how do we take energy efficiency to that common man? I mean, how do we create that kind of awareness, create that kind of momentum to talk about? You mentioned about appliance rating and a 5-star appliance being visibly understood to be more efficient than a 2-star or a 3-star appliance. What, in your opinion, can be done for buildings in terms of taking energy efficiency to a common man?
Yeah, I think a common man in India, like I think that famous ad for one of the cars. When you somebody visits NASA and then asks what is the mileage of that rocket. I think in India, a common man first looks at the what are the cost benefit analysis is the first thing that comes to their mind. So you have to first talk that language. That is where, kind of a star rating really helps, because it conveys in simple terms that 5-star is better than 3-star. Then it is for the person to do the, the math on how much I should pay extra and things like that. If we can bring that more and more into the buildings, be it for apartments, be it for the components of apartments. I spoke about windows, but even for apartments, you can do that. I mean, why not? Why not for an apartment, what are the, based on the energy efficiency? I think the more that kind of simple language is conveyed to the end consumer, they will understand, and then they start asking the questions. The more they ask the questions, the rest of the, the value chain will change.
Thank you so much. I think these are the set of questions that have come in the panel today. Thanks for taking your time for your address, for answering all the questions. And maybe I leave the floor to you to give us your closing remarks, Mr. Unnikrishnan, and with that we close the session.
Yeah. No, thank you. Thank you for the patient listening of my talk, and also very, very interesting questions. And the kind of questions that have come up gives me more and more, it's really promising. It gives me the confidence that I think we are on the right path. I think all the people who are interested in this are on the right path, and together we can make a difference. We can be very ambitious as a country. We can grow. Why 5 trillion? We can grow to 10 trillion also, but do it in a very energy efficient and a sustainable manner. And once again, I thank IGBC, Mr. Venkata Giri and Mr. Kiran. Thank you for inviting me and having me today. Thank you.